Imagine this: you return home early from a themed housewarming party, expecting to find your spouse relaxing on the couch. Instead, you walk in on an unimaginable betrayal. What would you do? How would you react? How far would you go to pick up the pieces of your life? That night, I was supposed to decompress. My best friend, Mike, had invited me to his new place in Austin, Texas, for a 1980s-themed housewarming. It sounded like fun, drinks, music, and nostalgic costumes. Jessica, my wife of nearly 8 years, wasn't feeling well and opted to stay home. "You should go," she'd said with a small smile, wrapping herself in her favorite blanket. "I'll just rest and watch something on TV." It sounded reasonable. Jessica had been working long hours at her new project management role, tackling an ambitious rollout for her company. Still, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in my chest. Jessica had been distant recently, less affectionate, often preoccupied. Her laughter felt forced, her gaze distracted. I chalked it up to work stress, telling myself I was overthinking things. The party was lively, filled with neon colors, leg warmers, and upbeat 80s hits. People laughed and posed for photos with props like boom boxes and cassette tapes. I should have been enjoying myself, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Jessica. Maybe it was her quiet behavior lately, or the way she'd been so quick to shield her phone whenever it buzzed. Small things like that had started to add up. By 9 p.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I told Mike I had to head out early, offering a vague excuse about needing to check on Jessica. He teased me for being overprotective but wished me well as I left. The drive home felt unusually long, the quiet hum of the city streets doing nothing to calm my restless mind. As I turned onto our street, something caught my eye: a dark gray sedan parked just a few houses down. I didn't recognize it. The car was tucked close to the curb, as though trying not to draw attention. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I pulled into the driveway. The house was mostly dark, save for the faint glow coming from the bedroom window upstairs. Normally, I wouldn't think twice about it. Jessica loved to read or watch her favorite true crime documentaries before bed. But combined with the strange car and the unease gnawing at me, something felt off. When I stepped inside, the house was eerily silent. No sound of the dishwasher humming, no low murmur of the TV. My heart began to pound as I climbed the stairs, each creak of the wood echoing louder than it should. Then I heard it, a soft voice, followed by a laugh. I froze on the landing, straining to make sense of what I was hearing. It wasn't the TV. It wasn't a podcast. It was voices, Jessica's voice, along with someone else's. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. My stomach twisted into knots as I pushed it open. There they were, Jessica sitting on the edge of the bed, her shirt draped carelessly over a chair. Across from her stood a man in his late 30s, tall with dark hair, his sleeves rolled up and his tie loosened. The tension in the air was palpable, the intimacy undeniable even before either of them noticed me standing there. "Ethan?" Jessica's voice was barely a whisper as she scrambled to grab her shirt. The man, whose name I later learned was Ryan, froze, his expression shifting from surprise to guilt. I didn't mean," he stammered, but I didn't hear the rest. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind racing faster than I could process. The air felt suffocating, thick with betrayal and the weight of unspoken words. "Jessica," I finally managed, my voice trembling but sharp. "What is this?" "Ethan, she reached for me, but I stepped back instinctively. "Let me explain. It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" I barked, my voice rising. "Then please, enlighten me, Jessica. Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty damn clear." Ryan hastily grabbed his jacket from the chair, his face pale. "I think I should go." "You think?" I shot him a glare that stopped him in his tracks. "Don't worry. You're leaving. Now." He didn't argue, brushing past me as he left the room. The sound of his hurried footsteps echoed down the stairs and out the front door. I turned my attention back to Jessica, who sat on the bed, her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking. "Ethan," she sobbed, "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But I love you. Please, just give me a chance to explain." I ran a hand through my hair, pacing the room as I tried to keep my emotions from boiling over. "How long?" I demanded, my voice cold and steady. "What?" she whispered, looking up at me with tear-streaked cheeks. "How long has this been going on?" I repeated, my tone sharper. She hesitated, her lips trembling. "A few months. 3, maybe 4, her words hit me like a sledgehammer. For nearly half a year, the woman I trusted more than anyone had been sneaking around with another man. Why? The word came out quieter than I expected, almost a plea. "Why would you do this? Was I not enough for you?" "It wasn't about that," she said quickly, shaking her head. "It wasn't you, Ethan. It was me. I've felt lost, I guess. Ryan made me feel seen, like I mattered again." Her confession stung even more. "Seen?" I laughed bitterly. "I've been here the whole time, Jessica. You could have talked to me instead of this." Her sobs grew louder, but I couldn't bear to listen. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room. The drive felt endless, my emotions churning between rage, heartbreak, and disbelief. I parked in a dimly lit lot by the lake, stepping out into the cool night air in an attempt to calm my thoughts. It wasn't working. I thought back to the last few months, the late nights Jessica said were for work, the texts she quickly hid, the excuses that always seemed just plausible enough. I had dismissed every warning sign, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. A loud splash in the water broke my train of thought. I looked toward the shore and noticed a couple of teenagers skipping stones and laughing. Their carefree energy felt foreign, like something from another lifetime. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Mike. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. "Ethan, hey. Everything okay?" "No," I said bluntly. "It's not." Mike's tone shifted instantly. "What happened?" I hesitated, the words catching in my throat. "Jessica, she's been cheating on me." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Mike spoke, his voice low and steady. "Man, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over? Or meet somewhere?" "No," I said after a moment. "I just needed to say it out loud, I guess." We talked for a few minutes before I hung up. His support was comforting, but it didn't dull the pain. Nothing could. By the time I returned home, the house was dark and silent. I went straight to the guest room, closing the door behind me without a word to Jessica. I couldn't face her, not yet. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Ryan, the way she looked at him, the sound of her laugh. It was like a nightmare on repeat. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds as I sat on the edge of the guest bed, my head in my hands. Jessica knocked softly on the door. "Ethan?" Her voice was hoarse, thick with emotion. "Please. Can we talk?" I opened the door just enough to look at her. Her eyes were swollen and red, her face pale. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but it was quickly drowned out by anger. "Fine," I said, stepping aside. She walked into the room hesitantly, her arms wrapped around herself like a shield. "I know I hurt you," she began, her voice trembling. "But I want to fix this. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." "Fix this?" I repeated, my tone cold. "You think this can be fixed with an apology and a few promises?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. "I still love you, Ethan. Doesn't that mean anything? I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall. Love? If you loved me, Jessica, you wouldn't have betrayed me like this. You wouldn't have lied to me for months. She broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. I made a mistake, she whispered. A terrible mistake. But I don't want to lose you. I stared at her for a long moment. Why did you do it? Her sobs quieted as she struggled to find the words. I felt invisible. Like I was just going through the motions of life. Ryan made me feel alive again. Alive? I said bitterly. You destroyed our marriage for some thrill? For someone who clearly doesn't care about you enough to face me like a man? Her shoulders slumped as she shook her head. It wasn't like that. It doesn't matter how it was, Jessica. The damage is done. Later that day, I decided I couldn't let things end like this, not without some clarity, not without taking control of the situation. I reached out to a private investigator named Brad, someone I had worked with years ago on a corporate case. He was professional, discreet, and exactly what I needed. Brad, I said when he answered, I need you to dig into someone for me. I want everything, phone records, messages, meetings, whatever you can find. He didn't ask for details, just the name, Ryan Carter. The wheels were in motion, and I didn't feel the slightest hesitation. If Ryan thought he could get away with what he'd done, he was wrong. Jessica tried to approach me again that evening, but I told her I needed space. If you're serious about fixing this, give me time, I said firmly. She nodded reluctantly and retreated to the bedroom. 3 days later, Brad called with an update. Ethan, I've got something, he said. Ryan Carter is married with 2 kids. Works as a financial consultant. Clean public image, but there's plenty beneath the surface. His affair with Jessica is well documented, texts, emails, photos, but that's not all. What else? I asked, gripping the phone tightly. There's financial trouble. He's been embezzling from one of his clients, nothing massive, but enough to raise eyebrows if it came out. I felt a rush of vindication. Send me everything. The evidence arrived the next morning in a thick envelope. As I sifted through the documents, my anger solidified into resolve. Ryan had more to lose than I'd initially thought, and I wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed. That evening, I sat down at my laptop and drafted an email to Ryan's wife, Heather. I had found her social media profile easily, photos of her smiling with their kids, their family vacations, her captions filled with love and pride for a man who didn't deserve it. Subject: Something you deserve to know. Dear Heather, my name is Ethan, and I'm reaching out because I believe you deserve the truth. Your husband, Ryan, has been having an affair with my wife, Jessica, for the past several months. I know this will come as a shock, but I've attached evidence to support what I'm saying, including text messages and photos. I'm sorry to be the one to bring this into your life, but I thought it was the right thing to do. Please don't hesitate to contact me if you need to talk or want more information. Ethan. I attached the files and hit send. The moment I clicked the button, I felt a mix of guilt and satisfaction. Guilt for shattering Heather's world, but satisfaction in knowing I was taking action, finally standing up for myself. The next day, Heather responded. Her email was brief but filled with raw emotion. Ethan, thank you for reaching out. I had suspected something was wrong, but I never imagined this. Seeing the evidence confirms my worst fears. I need time to process this, but I truly appreciate you telling me. Heather. Later that evening, she called me. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the pain beneath it. I can't believe he would do this to me, to our family, she said. I don't even know how to begin explaining this to my kids. I nodded silently, understanding all too well what she meant. We talked for a while, sharing our anger, confusion, and sadness. By the end of the call, we had decided to coordinate our next steps. Heather agreed to confront Ryan privately while I focused on ensuring both Jessica and Ryan faced professional repercussions for their choices. The following week, I sent an anonymous email to both Ryan's and Jessica's HR departments. Using the evidence Brad had gathered, I detailed their affair and how it violated company policies against inappropriate workplace relationships. I didn't expect immediate action, but I knew this would set off internal investigations. Meanwhile, Heather confronted Ryan. She called me afterward, her voice shaking with anger and exhaustion. He admitted to everything, she said. At first, he tried to spin it, like it was just a mistake or something I could forgive. But I told him there's no coming back from this. I've already contacted a divorce lawyer. Her strength inspired me. Heather wasn't letting Ryan's betrayal define her, and neither would I let Jessica's define me. At home, Jessica's behavior grew more desperate. She alternated between tearful apologies and defensive outbursts. "Ethan, I know I screwed up, but what you're doing is cruel," she yelled one evening. "You've destroyed my reputation, my friendships, everything." I stared at her, unflinching. "No, Jessica. You destroyed your life. I just made sure you faced the consequences." She broke down, but her tears didn't move me. I had nothing left to give. Soon, the fallout began. Jessica was called into a meeting with HR and was terminated for violating the company's ethics policy. Ryan faced similar consequences, his suspension quickly turning into a dismissal. Heather and I stayed in touch throughout the ordeal, providing each other with updates and support. One evening, Heather called with surprising news. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Ryan's been hiding financial misconduct at work. When HR started looking into him because of the affair, they uncovered his embezzlement. They're threatening legal action." Hearing this, I couldn't help but feel a grim sense of justice. Ryan had built his life on lies, and now it was all unraveling. As for Jessica, she eventually moved out. I watched silently as she packed her things, her face a mixture of regret and bitterness. "Goodbye, Ethan," she said quietly before stepping out the door. I didn't respond. Once she was gone, I leaned against the door and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, the house felt like it belonged to me again. But moving forward wasn't easy. Nights were lonely, the silence often oppressive. I threw myself into work, hobbies, and gym sessions to distract myself. Slowly, I began to rebuild, one step at a time. One evening, I returned to the hill where I often went to reflect. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, and I stood there with my camera, capturing the scene. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a familiar voice said behind me. I turned to see Anna, her sketchpad in hand, smiling softly. "It is," I said, smiling back. We talked as the sun dipped below the horizon, sharing stories about our lives and our dreams. Anna had her own scars, her own battles, but there was a quiet strength in her that I found comforting. Our connection deepened over the months. We didn't rush anything, there was no need. We supported each other, learning to trust again, piece by piece.